Hello and welcome to my channel. In this one I'm going to do a simple landscape in charcoal, something that you can do in under an hour. If you want to see the full video, you should check out my Patreon. The background noise that you can hear is rain and thunder. It's just that kind of evening. The first thing I need to do is a simple sketch, because I want to have a row of trees in the foreground and maybe a larger tree somewhere in the middle. But I'm going to start with the sky. I'm going to use some charcoal powder to shade the top part of the drawing, the sky. I'm going to push that around with a brush to distribute it evenly, and then blend with a paper tissue, using very little pressure and using a circular motion. That way I can blend it evenly, and it's not going to be too dark and it's not going to have any texture. Once that is done, I'm going to draw some clouds. The drawing tool I'm holding right now is a piece of vine charcoal. It's on a pencil. So it's a vine charcoal stick. It's soft natural charcoal. You can also use willow charcoal. It's pretty much the same thing. It's soft and crumbly. It's easy to blend. It's easy to erase. It is easy to manipulate in terms of adding and taking away value. So I'm using it to draw some clouds. The paper I'm working on is a Fabriano sketching paper, and the size is 9 times 12 inches. So I want to draw a mass of clouds gathering above the horizon, and maybe just a few scattered clouds slightly detached from the rest. So no reference photo for you this time. This one is pretty much built from scratch. I'm just going to add a few more shapes of clouds here to the right. I was kind of inspired to do this when I was driving back home, and the sun was setting and the clouds were darker than the sky. So I wanted to do something like that, because normally when you draw the sky, you shade the sky and then you draw lighter clouds by using erasers. And now I want the clouds to be darker than the sky, because the light source is behind them and the part of the clouds that is facing us is darker. So I blended a little bit with a brush. I can also dab on it a bit with a paper towel or a paper tissue, which can lift up a little bit of that charcoal. One of the things that you'll see with vine charcoal is that it behaves a lot differently than the charcoal from your charcoal pencils, because it doesn't really stick to the surface of the paper. It just sort of floats there. And you can move it around, so you can create some painterly effects with it when you use a brush or a piece of paper tissue like I'm using right now. You can kind of move it around and create those painterly effects, which is not really something that you can do with charcoal pencils. Right now I'm pushing it a little bit in with my fingers, and also my fingers allow me to create some nice shapes and edges around the top where I want a cleaner edge against the background of the sky. Now I'm just going to go over that with a soft brush and even it out a little bit more. Just doing a little bit more dabbing here to the right to soften these clouds at the top. I'm want them to look kind of smeared a little bit. And adding a few more touches with a harder brush here and there. Different brushes kind of blend differently. Softer brushes blend more smoothly, moving the material gently over the surface of the paper. Harder brushes allow you to push the charcoal dust into the grain of the paper. And now I'm using a tortillon to put down some finishing touches to draw some smaller shapes. Because a tortillon is a drawing tool as well as a blending tool. This is a kneaded eraser or a kneadable eraser now. I'm going to draw some lighter clouds in the background. So I want to make it look like the setting sun is behind these clouds, but it's illuminating some of the clouds which are further back over there. And initially I wanted to have a row of trees at the bottom, but I decided to add a few mountains in the distance. I thought that this would add a little bit more depth to my scene. So again, I'm using a piece of vine charcoal, and I drew the shape of some distant mountains or hills. I'm going to blend that a little bit. And once that is done, I'm going to draw some trees. Now the way I thought that this would look is just simple silhouettes of trees or canopies of trees in front of the lighter background of the sky. I'm just going to add a little bit more value here to these distant mountains because I want the row of trees to be lower down a little bit. So my idea was to have like a bunch of darker shapes against a lighter background of the sky, with maybe one or two larger, more defined trees in the foreground, also like silhouettes. So a very simple landscape, the kind that I've done already a number of times before, where I like to create contrast and tension between the foreground elements and the background elements by making the foreground elements much darker so that they stand out against the background. So here, as you can see, I'm drawing that row of trees and bushes. They kind of merge into a single shape, but you can see that I'm drawing them as a bunch of smaller shapes so that it looks like foliage, so that it looks like tops of canopies of trees. Now the way that I do this is simply by dragging my pencil and scumbling it. I'm using a scumbling technique in combination with a little bit of stippling here and there, but mostly scumbling. I just sort of drag the pencil using a circular and a back and forth motion, but the key is to use very small marks, to create very small marks, because you can't drag your pencil side to side creating large marks. That wouldn't create the texture that you like, that you want to produce. Anyway, I'm going to draw a tree here in front of those clouds, and that silhouette of the tree will create nice contrast with the background. For the row of trees and for this tree, I am using charcoal pencils. So I switched to charcoal pencils, and the charcoal pencils I'm using are Master's Touch woodless charcoal pencils. I just like them because they're relatively easy to sharpen. They don't break that often, even though they do break occasionally, like all pencils, but that doesn't really happen very often when your pencil sharpener is sharp and new. Anyway, I drew some branches and a tree trunk to position my tree, and now I'm going to start working on the canopy, adding a little bit of foliage. So these woodless charcoal pencils, they come in several grades, and I normally use the medium grade for much of the drawing process, but here I decided to go in, and I use the soft charcoal pencil sparingly because it's the darkest thing that I have. But here I decided to go in with the soft charcoal pencil immediately, and that's what I'm going to be using for all of these foreground elements, because I wanted to create a lot of that contrast. So as you can see, I'm back to drawing foliage here, and I'm drawing groups of leaves or clusters of leaves, and I want to make the canopy look like so that it's not too dense, so that we can see some of that background light of the sky breaking through the canopy, and so that we can see some of the branches as well. So I'm going to be adding some foliage and branches as I go along, but I want to come up with a nice shape of a tree. So I'm not going to give you a specific reference, but if you want a reference for this, you just look for or Google a silhouette or a tree and find the one that you like. And it doesn't have to be exactly the same when you draw it, just draw something that kind of looks like it. And I'm just drawing a few more branches here and there, and drawing the foliage. I suppose I should say a few words more about how I draw the foliage. So it's basically the same technique that I used for the bottom part of the scene. I'm just scumbling or stippling, creating small marks, sometimes dragging my pencil, allowing it to create circular motions, sometimes drawing a few smaller shapes which are detached from the rest that look like small clusters of leaves. And I'm going to make the rest of this bottom portion also almost completely dark. You can see that I'm not really covering everything. I leave a little bit of those lighter spaces in between because I want to have some suggestions of lighter shapes in there, because it is foliage. So when the viewer looks at it, I want it to look at something that's not completely dark. There are some suggestions of lighter shapes which are maybe catching a little bit of light from that light source. I'm just drawing some more of the foliage here at the top, trying to get a nice shape of a tree. In some places I add a little bit more foliage in a group, making the canopy kind of more opaque, meaning that it obscures more of the background. In some places I make fewer of them so that more of the light is coming through. And I wanted a deciduous tree, a nice round wide canopy. I'm drawing some more branches here, and as you can see, I'm able to create some fairly thin lines. The key to drawing branches, I should probably say a few words about that as well, is to make them taper as they grow out, because they can't be thicker near the end. They have to be thicker at the base, and the branch out of which another branch originates needs to be a little bit thicker, and then another thinner branch or twig grows out of it. So that's the way you draw it, and of course you have to make them sort of draw and bend in different directions. But the key, I think, is to make them taper so that they would make sense to the viewer, because if you see the branch is thicker on the other end, it doesn't really make sense. Just adding a little bit more foliage, and now the canopy is starting to look pretty much what I wanted it to look like. I don't want it any denser than this or any bigger than this. It's a very nice shape that kind of stands out against the background of that sky. Just cleaning up the shape a little bit with a tortillon, and adding a little bit more to some places where I feel like some of the branches or maybe the tree trunk needs to be a little bit thicker. And I'm doing a little bit more work on this bottom portion, because I need to make all of this dark as well. Just going to do the same thing, drag my pencil At the top I need to be a little bit more careful because I want to create shapes, small shapes that look like foliage, that look like tops of canopies of trees. And as I work my way down, I can be a little bit less careful, make larger strokes and make everything a little bit darker, because you can't really discern any shapes there. So like I said, it's a fairly simple scene. It takes a little bit of practice to draw foliage and the clouds, but you know, practice is necessary. I'm not saying mine are perfect, but obviously you can't get them to look good the first time you try. I just sort of try to explain my general approach to drawing these things. It's not a big deal. Once you grasp some of the basics, you should be able to do it. Just adding a few more clouds here at the bottom, and pretty much wrapping things up. I'm going to put my signature on the left side. I'm going to draw it with a Tombow Mono 0 eraser. And now the drawing is done. I hope you enjoyed the drawing process. Don't forget to check out my other videos. And like I already mentioned, if you want to see full-length videos and more content, check out my Patreon. Bye bye.